Well, good morning, everybody. I don't know much about artificial intelligence, but I think you do need intelligence to go to space. That's what I know. And today, hopefully, we'd like to get you in the mood of what we're doing here in the United Arab Emirates in the Mohammed Rashid Space Center. And I have a very short video, an exciting video, just to get you into the mood. So don't worry, we're not going to be launching Burj Khalifa anytime soon. And just to give you a quick introduction to the Mohammed Rashid Space Center. So we're actually about, we started really in 2005, but we were established as the Emirates Institute for Advanced Science and Technology in 2006, and that was renamed in 2015 to the Mohammed Rashid Space Center, which is obviously named after the Prime Minister. Just to give you an idea of what we do at the center, I mean, really, I think, as the previous speaker mentioned, we do tend to buy a lot of technologies here in the UAE. We don't manufacture our own technologies. We don't develop our own intellectual property. And this is exactly what we want to change at the Mohammed Rashid Space Center. So our mission from day one was that we need to be able to develop our own technologies. We need to be able to develop those technologies in the UAE using our own capabilities. And maybe we'll talk a little bit at the end about how SMEs here in the UAE should be a big part of that next step. So to give you a quick idea of the team, we have about 200 members. And I also thank the previous speaker because most of these people are super nerds, and without gaming, they wouldn't be able to come to work in the morning. So I thank him for that. And they're quite young as well. So the average age is 27. Currently, the team is 100% Emirati UAE nationals, and we are looking at expanding that to obviously residents of the region and the world. But focusing on this age of 27, I mean, this is a similar age range that we had when the Apollo missions were launched by NASA, and the average age of the people that worked on those missions was 26, 27. So really, youth and their excitement, as we saw from Tanmay today, can do a lot. And that's quite inspiring. I'm considered quite old for them, and they probably want to get rid of me soon. Another exciting statistic that we have is that we have 40% female participation in the engineering side of things. So that's also quite a unique figure to have, especially in the aerospace field. So usually that figure is in the low 20s, even the low 10s. And we are quite actively working to make sure that we get a good gender balance at the Mohammed Rashid Space Center. Now, I don't have a lot of time, so I just give you a quick introduction basically to the UAE National Space Program, which has 4 main programs. The first one is the National Satellite Development Program, and this is the first project that we started with, a program that we started with nearly 15 years ago. And the idea was that we develop satellites. Eventually, we were able to develop satellites locally in the United Arab Emirates. We started with all our this is the way we start all our programs, with partnerships. So we partnered with South Korea on a technology know-how and knowledge transfer program. We sent a team there to spend about 10 years working on our first 2 satellites, DubaiSat-1, which is in orbit, and DubaiSat-2, again, which is in orbit. And they learned the technology and the ideas of how to build satellites. I think that technology transfer was very successful, that now we are able to develop the first fully designed and built satellite here in the United Arab Emirates, which is named after the UAE President, Khalifa Saad. And this satellite will be launched, it's ready now, it's in our clean rooms in Al Khawanij, and it will be launched at the beginning of next year from Japan. Also, our technology, I always say this as a joke, our technology transfer was so successful that I ended up marrying a woman from South Korea. So my dad says you took too much knowledge from Korea. So these satellites are remote sensing satellites. They basically image Earth, and we use these applications for environmental purposes, for town planning. There's a lot of intelligence that can come into these images. So if you can imagine being able to take an image of the city of Dubai every day, and then being able to detect information such as the health of the palm trees, how many palm trees we have. And if you're able to do that once a week or once every 3 days, that can really, let's say, pivot well into some different applications that hopefully small companies can think about and start to develop for us and for the government. We also have other programs such as this Knife one. This is a university satellite project where we developed a small CubeSat with the American University of Sharjah and launched it at the beginning of this year. So that's more educational to help students, get them involved in this field. And then we also are working with the government entities on developing specific satellites for their needs. This Dubai Municipality satellite will be launched in 2019, and this is dedicated to observing greenhouse gases from space. So with one image in one day, we are able to see 120 kilometers of what CO2 and CH4 is in our atmosphere, above Dubai and the UAE, but also anywhere in the world. So that's quite a useful and intelligent information to have. The second national program that we have is the Emirates Mars mission. And this is obviously, I'm not sure if you all know about this, but this is the Arab and Islamic world's first mission out of Earth orbit. So this is the first time anybody from this region goes to Mars. And if we succeed, inshallah, we will be the 4th country to orbit Mars. So that's quite, if you think about it, a big objective to have. And this is really building up on the last 15 years of building our capabilities. Now we are, and from an engineering perspective, now we're going towards the science. So we're not as strong in the science here in the UAE. This mission will make sure that we are able now to work with our universities, put the scientific questions of why we go to Mars, what is this probe going to do? Just to give you an idea, this probe will be studying the atmosphere of Mars. It'll be trying to detect what happened to that atmosphere. Why is that atmosphere very thin? Is this something that could potentially happen anywhere else? If we want to put humans on Mars, that information is key. Because to land on Mars, you need to know information about the atmosphere. Again, we always work in terms of international cooperation, and we're working with academic partners in the United States, specifically on the science of this mission. This mission was kicked off in 2015. We are currently in basically, we've completed our design and we're going to start our manufacturing. And the mission will be launched in July 2020. And it will take about 7 to 8 months to get to Mars. So Mars is very far. That's the cruise phase. And the window to Mars opens up every 2 years. So if we don't launch in July 2020, we have about 2 weeks. Then we have to wait till July 2022. Which I think our government will be very upset with us. So definitely we have 3 weeks or 2 weeks in July to launch. And the reason for that is the mechanics, the orbital mechanics of how the planets align, Earth and basically Mars. And we try to launch in that time frame to shorten the distance and the time it takes to get to Mars, which is about 7 months in the shortest distance. This is just what the probe looks like, and it has 3 scientific instruments. One is optical, one is infrared, and one is UV. Our third exciting project, well, it's not really a project, it's more of a strategy, I would say. So this is the Mars 2117 strategy. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of this because this is really what happened this year. So the UAE looks at Mars as a destination, as an important destination. And you might ask why? Why are we looking at Mars? And it's not really the destination that is the main focus, it's more of the journey. So how we get to Mars, what we do to get there, is what is important to us in the UAE. So as I mentioned earlier, we want to develop engineering capabilities, we want to develop scientific capabilities. You need big moonshot goals, such as these and the previous ones, to be able to act as an anchor for your program, and then from there you're able to build those capabilities in-house. So this mission is basically the idea of putting a colony on Mars 100 years from today. So that's a generational plan. 3-4 generations are going to be working on this. This is a very long-term vision put forward by their highnesses, and it's something that we at the center need to work on. And again, Mars is quite important, especially to the UAE. So when we look at the UAE, we have national challenges. I think everybody has these similar national challenges, but when we look at the UAE specifically, you've got energy, food, and water security issues. So these are big problems here. We don't produce our own food, water is scarce, etc. If you go to Mars, those things are multiplied. So whatever technologies we develop to go to Mars, whether it's humans or not, those technologies come back to Earth and they will support us here in the UAE and the globe. So it's very useful and very important to go to space and to explore space for these reasons. I'll skip this. The first project that we have on the Mars 2117 strategy is the Mars Science City. So when you think of a 100-year plan, that's going to be cut into chunks of 3, 4, 5 years, and then 5 years. So this is the first 5 years. So the first 5 years is that the UAE now will plan to build a science city dedicated to Mars in Al Khawanij, just opposite Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center. This will be about 2 million square foot domes, and that's some of the largest domes dedicated to this type of science ever built in the world. And what we'll do in these domes is focus again on food, water, and energy research. And that research will be happening in 3 dedicated domes. We'll invite scientists and researchers from all over the globe to come and work with us at the center and at the Science City to try and find novel ways of producing or making production of food and energy and water more efficient for the ground and for space. We'll also have an exciting museum. So we're planning to build a space museum and a science museum there. And some of the technology in building that museum will be using, for example, 3D printing the walls from sand from the UAE desert. So if you're going to go to Mars, you've got to use some of the materials that you have in Mars to try and make, obviously, getting there easier. So these types of thoughts and types of things that we're doing in the Mars Science City will help lay the foundations of hopefully getting humans to Mars and having a colony there. The fourth program that we have, and this is just one slide, is basically the UAE astronauts program. So this again was launched at the beginning of this year. And this really works very well with the previous one. So we're going to Mars, we're doing a lot of research here on the ground. And that research is dedicated, as you heard, to getting people living longer and living on other planets. So our astronauts program is going to take that research and test it in a microgravity environment around Earth. So either at the ISS or in dedicated facilities that will be built. And we plan to launch our astronauts. I don't want to give too much information because hopefully you'll be hearing something in the coming months about this program. But we plan to launch our astronauts and have them support a lot of the research that's happening globally, but also focus on some of the main areas of our own research. Before I end, I just wanted to give a few, let's say, thoughts on what we think at the Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center about SMEs. So predominantly what you see here and what you've heard is government-led. So this is government funding. It's internal research at the center being conducted. We sometimes work with local universities and sponsor them to conduct projects with us. The next phase of what we're trying to do is to build the Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center SME program. And what we want to do is that instead of us as a government spending a lot of money on trying to develop certain technologies in-house, what we would like to do is we want to support SMEs in the UAE that would be able to work with us on some of our high-tech programs. So maybe also what the previous speaker said, instead of us buying technology from China or wherever, we want to develop these technologies. So now we are developing these technologies in a government environment. Now we want to push out and support SMEs around us. So I think this obviously will help establish the UAE's independent science and technology capabilities, which is important for us. And I think this is something that we can support SMEs with. And one of the benefits we see is usage of Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center's intellectual property and patents. So that is something that we will provide to SMEs and provide guidance and training for them to be able to support us. So some of the fields that we're looking at, the focus areas, are mechanical manufacturing, so aerospace and military grade panels that would go into space. And a lot of this manufacturing is happening in the UAE, but maybe it's not to the aerospace grade. So it's more of just slightly adjusting what is already being done for an industry such as ours. Onboard software development, so a lot of software is being done, so any kind of software development for space missions in the spacecraft on the ground is something that we would look at as to outsource to SMEs that are based here in the UAE. And a third and final one that I put is electronic board design, the printing, soldering, and testing of those boards. So we might provide the design, and then an SME here would do the rest for us and provide us a finished product. So we do that finished product in the UAE, but we want to make sure that SMEs are able to do that. And once they support the Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center, hopefully they'll be able to go out and then support industry globally. So there's only one rule, or a couple of rules actually, but anyways, it must be based and set up in the UAE and no outsourcing. So we don't want a company to be basically selling product from other companies. We want that activity to be done here. So I've just put an email there. If anybody's interested, you can contact her. She's leading this program. And that's something that we would really like to develop in the next 5 years. So when we say in the next 5 years, I want to see components that were manufactured, developed by SMEs, companies in the UAE on Mars, or around Mars. And that's really our objective that we have here. That's my final slide. Thank you very much.